guys, welcome to your final week of instruction for your online training class. I'm going to wrap up a few things tonight, show you some leash corrections, how to do that if you're feeling the need to do that, how to do some hand signals, which is pretty simple. It would have been on your homework sheets the last few weeks, but I only cover it in class the last week because it really is something that dogs find very straightforward, very easy. It doesn't tend to take a long time to teach them. Typically I would do a recall in class as well, and some stays, and get you to practice your walking. What I am, like I said, going to show you tonight is how to do some leash corrections. Again, it'll be a kind of a fake demo in my house. Obviously my dog's not going to pull too much, but I just kind of want to show you some leash technique, probably without my dog. I'll use a dummy. But to start, I just want to remind you what you should be working on with your attention. The couple of exercises that I left you with, one is your name call attention, which is how your dog responds to their name being called. You call their name, how quickly do they look to you, and how long do they hold eye contact. Again, I know I've mentioned this repeatedly, but do make sure that you've worked on the FAST criteria first. And if you're trying to clear up something for your dog, whether it be how quickly they look at you or how long how much duration they hold, you really only should work on one criteria at a time. So if it's duration you're looking for, maybe don't be as picky about how quickly they looked at you, but I do encourage you to really work on having them respond quickly before you work any real amount of duration. I did share with you that with my own puppy Riggs. I hurried it a bit too quickly and I got a dog. I have since fixed it, but for a little while I had him slow to respond to his name, but he would hold eye contact for probably about 5 seconds once he looked. I had to backtrack a bit and clear that up for him because I didn't follow my own advice. So get that fast look to you first. Start working, if you haven't already, which life provides lots anyways, but start working in some distractions. Keep in mind when you're working with distractions, no matter what behavior you're teaching, it's always harder with distractions. Expect less, reward more in those situations for your dog. You want them to build confidence, you want them to have success, and you want them to learn to respond to you despite other things going on in their environment. So you do need to keep that in mind. Environment changes make things difficult for dogs to process. So as they get more experienced, as they go to different environments more often and learn to engage with their handler and follow instruction and work and earn reward, those things will become easier. Again, a Josie dog will very easily go to any environment and respond pretty much the same. My Riggs puppy is still very much a work in progress with that, and I sometimes forget because he's so grown up in many ways, super trained already, very mature in a lot of ways. I'm reminded in times of distraction, and distraction could just be one person walking down the road for this puppy, that I'm not going to get the same result as if it was a bit more distraction free for him. So keep that in mind and know that it will get better moving forward. The other attention exercise I left you with is a quiet attention exercise. So you as a handler do not say any words. You hold a treat or a toy, you show it to your dog, and you just hold it off to the side, patient, wait for them to give you some eye contact, and reward when they do. Again, same blurb about criteria for that. Work on the fast before you work on duration too much. I will quickly, sorry, my dog's running into something in my yard. What are you doing? What are you doing? They're back. Dirt, I think. Spring dirt eating. I don't know. The impulse control attention, I like that for lots of focus exercises. I will often do that and encourage them to do it on a stay. When they get good at that exercise, you can use 2 hands, and that's what I do with my Josie. I haven't gotten that far with Riggs yet, but Josie will, when we practice that exercise, I usually use 2 hands. So keep that in mind for your attention. Let's talk about leash corrections, and then I'll bring one of my dogs in. And I'm going to just show you a couple different things that I've used, which reminds me I am missing one of those items. I wonder if I can find it really quickly. Hang on. Not too bad. I just had to think about where my training bag was that I usually take to class. So, okay, couple of training aids if you wanted to use, if you aren't already using something to help with pulling, use it. I use it in young dogs sometimes. My Border Collie puppy right now works on a head collar for walking when I don't have time to train him, or if I'm walking with both of my dogs, which is often. I will walk him on a gentle leader, because he pulls like a banshee, like he's just wild, always has been. So yeah, a gentle leader fits, and I'll when I bring Riggs in, I'll show you. I'll put it on him and show you. It fits over the dog's nose, like kind of sits on their muzzle, and then behind their head, and then attaches here. Gentle leader is the only brand of head collar that I really like. They fit well. It's a good company. I've never had a problem with them. They work really great in dogs that are really pulley, difficult to control. When you have control of their head, you definitely have control of the rest of their body a bit more. And again, with Riggs, this just makes my life easier, and has from the beginning with him. Having said that, I work lots with him one-on-one on practicing regular loose leash walking on a buckle leash, like the video that I shared with you guys on loose leash walking. So I do lots of that with him as well. Sometimes I'll do it even when I have my two dogs with me. So this head halter if you take the nose loop off, it becomes just a regular collar. So sometimes I will just take the nose loop off and put it on as a regular collar for him, and practice a little bit of regular walking too. I do really like the use of a head collar. I think they're gentle. I think they're pretty user friendly for handlers. They make life easier for you for walking. What I don't like about them is they can be mistaken as a muzzle and have the appearance of a muzzle because they go over the dog's muzzle. And anything that your dog learns about walking on a leash on a head halter, they don't translate to regular life. So if your long-term goal, like mine, is just to walk your dog on a regular collar and leash, then you have to work on that separately, which is, like I said, what I do with Riggs most of the time. My early morning walks, my lunchtime walks that might be a little bit faster, I usually wear my head collar because I don't take a lot of time for training. But any one-on-one time I have with him, or if I'm having a longer walk with he and Josie where I have a bit more time, then I will work on his leash skills based on his knowledge of following the feel of his leash. So he knows that when the leash becomes tight, he should not continue to pull. If I was to keep walking behind him, he would continue to pull. But I slow up my pace. I keep my pressure against him steady until he gives in, and then I'll move forward a bit more. I'll usually try to kind of talk to him, keep him a bit engaged with me to encourage that slack leash. When I don't have Josie with me, I will do occasional food rewards to let him know the right position. I find it a struggle with two dogs. Josie's very, very food motivated, and Riggs is only like moderately. He's food motivated, but he's happy without food too. It's difficult for me when I have another dog in there trying to get the food as well. So when I have just Josie, I usually just use pressure and release as an indication to him on whether we should move forward, whether I like what he's doing. When I have him alone, I'll practice a bit more of food rewarding position. The other thing that I really like to use, and I use these a lot, just quickly, like they're kind of a lazy man's tool, but I kind of like that. It's just a slip lead. This is it's an older one, but it's just a slip lead, so it's kind of like a choke collar to a degree, which I'm going to show you one of those in a moment too. But what it does is it will do a correction, and then this one doesn't release as well anymore because it's older, a little bit worn, but it will usually do a pretty pretty easy release. If your dog is pulling, it will tighten, and then as soon as they stop, or if you give a bit of a correction with it, then it will immediately release afterwards. Which brings me to my talk about choke collars. I'm not a huge fan. It's never my first go-to for anything. But I would be lying if I said to you that I have never used one or used one for loose leash walking training. I have. This actually is Josie's. This was actually never used for correction on Josie. I used it just to hold her tags, which I have a different tag set up now. Because I don't wear tags on my dogs all the time. But anyways, this is her old jewelry. Yeah, so, sorry, just looking at her tag for a second. So this is called a Volhard training collar, or snap collar. So what it does, or what it has, is it has a snap on one end, and then on the other end it has two metal rings. One is what we call live ring, the one that moves, and then there's the dead ring, is the one that is just in place. So in order for this to be an active training collar, you need to put this on the live ring, which is the one that moves, and then when you put it around your dog, same kind of thing, you give a correction and it gives a release. Having said that, you do have to put it on your dog properly, so it should look like, and I know you cannot appreciate that at all, but it's P is for puppy. Okay, I know that doesn't even look like a P, especially with those tags hanging there, but it's P is for puppy. The idea is that when you do that correction, that it releases easily. If you have it on the opposite way and you do your correction, it doesn't release as well. So the reason that these are the only kind that I like is because in order for a choke collar to fit properly and work properly, in order to work properly, it has to fit properly. If it goes over your dog's head, it's already too big. So in order for it to fit properly, it needs to be one of these snap around ones that you actually snap around your dog's neck, click, and then attach to the ring of your choice, whether you need it to be correction or just a regular collar. This is how big my little Josie's neck is under her coat. Again, she hasn't worn that in a long time, but yeah, they're not bad. Don't ever use a big chain one. Don't use one that goes over your dog's head. It's, like I said, it's already too big. If you're going to use one, use a Volhard snap training collar. Or you can use also, I don't have any experience with them. It's not something I've ever used. I'm not a huge harness fan. This puppy of mine was the first puppy I've ever used any kind of harness on, just when he was a little baby, because I thought he'd break his neck because he pulled so much. So I didn't want that to happen. Now, having said that, if you're going to use a harness to prevent pulling, make sure it is a harness specifically designed to prevent pulling. Most harnesses promote pulling, so you want to make sure that it is something that is specific to prevent pulling, and there's lots out there. In a normal lifestyle, I'd say go see the people at Global. I'm pretty sure I know you can still go see them. It may be a little bit limited as to how many products they're able to show you, because I think you can't go through the whole store, but they do have some great products there to help with pulling. Feel free to use some in the meantime while you're training your loose leash walking. I'm looking for something to use. What I use is, of course, in my training room, usually. Let me find a toy. Hold on. I'm going to use this toy. I am going to put this right around his little neck. Usually I would just attach it to a different toy that I have, but put it around the little teddy bear's neck. So what I'm going to just show you with this teddy bear demo, because I won't really be able to do it with my dog. And it's not something that I do a ton with him anyways, though I do from time to time offer a bit of a leash correction. So the way to do a proper leash correction is to actually put a little bit of slack in your leash, do a pop, and move along in the opposite direction, all right? So what happens when that leash becomes tight is that there's this tension here. If we just keep the tension there and just keep yanking our dog back, that almost tells them that we like the tension. If we continue to follow them, we're encouraging them to pull. What I encourage you to do, if you've done a lot of your foundation and your homework on teaching them to follow the pressure and reward that release, you've upped your criteria a little bit, so you're encouraging them to release that pressure. You praise them, keep engaged, and then they have to work a little longer before they get a food reward. You can also incorporate some corrections and changes of direction to your leash walking if you haven't already. So again, just to yank once that leash becomes tight, I think it just tells them that we like the tension there or that we're comfortable with it. Instead, I do kind of just a slight increase of pressure in a quick sort of way. So it would be, so my leash is tight, my dog is pulling this way, I slack, pop, and I would probably go the opposite way. I hope that your dog doesn't fly quite as much as that teddy bear did. Your correction, your physical correction should be relative to the size of the dog that you're training. With Riggs even, he's got a lot of momentum, but he's not quite as tough as stocky tough as an Aussie. Definitely don't use a ton of force with him, but I will do those little corrections. Usually if I see him, I'm like, oh, that leash is about to get tight, I'm prepared. You have to be proactive with this. My leash gets tight, I go slack, pop, and away I go. What is most important once you do that is when your dog catches up to you, you praise, engage, interact, and if they continue to hold position for 3 or 4, 4 or 5, 5 or 10 strides, whatever your criteria is, then you offer food reward. I will do my best. I wasn't thrilled with the loose leash walking video I did for you. Again, I need to recruit some help. Our schedule needs to line up to do that. But I will try to get a better one and incorporate some of those corrections as well for you to see. Head halter, harnesses to prevent pulling, slip lead, those are all great choices. Or your snap training collar that looks like so. Okay, it's really very simple, but it works. They work pretty well too. Okay, so usually what I do at this point in the class is I have dogs do sit stay around the room, and then I have one person at a time practice some walking skills, practice some heel position, out walking around, and maybe some leash corrections. But we can't do that. I'm going to bring Josie in and show you some hand signals. Riggs that hasn't been trained for any hand signals yet. Let's go. Good boy, buddy. Hi, Dose. How are you doing? You guys playing? What a good girl. Shake it off. No, shake it off. There you go. Good girl. All right, so Josie's here to help show some hand signals. Get a couple cookies ready. So for her, because she does know how to do these, I'll ask her to do a few things before I probably offer her a reward. Find out where's a good spot for you to actually see this. Here, Josie. Is that good? That's probably pretty good. Good girl. Good girl. Good. Turn around. Sit. Stay. Yes. Good girl. So you can see based on my hand signals what it is my dog is supposed to do. Okay, Jojo. All right. So we have, that is our down. I use the word flat, but that is for your down. That's for your sit. What a good girl. That's your come. This is your heel. It's just your hand gesture back. It's just fading our body cue and using just a hand signal. Good girl. Joe's heel. Good girl. She's crooked. Look how crooked you are. I can see in the camera. Good girl. I don't care. Good job. So typically in class, what I teach is really we just work on sit and down. Most dogs will follow a sit hand signal. very simply, without any, good girl, without any real help, any real luring or anything like that. What I will show you maybe with Riggs, because he doesn't know these as well. Come on in, buddy. Come on. Josie, good girl. Okay, so I'll show you with him. He should know the sit one all right without any help, I would bet. Riggs. Yeah, so most dogs, and I never really trained him for that, most dogs will figure that one out pretty easily based on our hand cue. The down one is a little bit harder. What I tend to do, this will be his first opportunity seeing this, I haven't done it with him at all, I give them the new signal, I say the old signal, and then I'm going to lure right to the ground. So I tend to keep my food reward in my signal hand, so I'm going to give my signal flat. Yes. Okay, and I lure all the way right to the ground. Because this is something kind of new, we're adding something different to this exercise. Okay, bud. So he thinks that's pretty fun. Flat. Okay, so I'll do that usually a few times. And every dog's going to be a little bit different. He already is anticipating that I'm going to ask him to lie down. Good boy. Sit. Yes. Good. Flat. Yes. Okay, so he's seeing that new signal. He hears his old signal. Okay, I'm following through with that muscle memory and encouraging him all the way down. I'll try it from a stand if I can keep him in a stand this time. See what he thinks about it. He thinks he's just going to offer to lie down repeatedly. That's just what he's going to do. Okay, buddy, come here. No, go get that. Woo! Woo! Light fixture. Here, buddy. Flat. Yes. Okay, so then my progression is I usually will try to stop luring them down. I will give them the hand signal, say the verbal, and wait to see what they do. Come here, bud. Flat. Yes. Okay, so he has no problem committing to going to that down position without my lure. I'll do it one more time with just my verbal and my new hand signal, and then I'll see where I'm at. I'm rushing it, and even when I do it in a class demo, I usually rush it as well. Because I'm trying to kind of show you the progression steps all at once, and dogs do tend to pick up on this really quickly. Here, bud. Flat. Yes. Okay. Job. Yes. So you can see how quickly, and I swear to God, I've not done that with him before, but often, and this is why I don't tend to spend a lot of time on this in class, even when I pick a class dog who is maybe a little less experienced in training, they typically pick it up pretty quickly. Within a session or two, they'll pick that up. Here, buddy, that's pretty fun. Now we know that's hand signal. Hey, no, it's not playtime. Yes. Okay, so you saw it took him a little bit of time to process that time. Maybe because his Teddy's laying beside him. Josie's whining on the other side of the door, so he's got some things to think about. Okay, buddy. But you can see how pretty quickly he picked that up, and that tends to be the norm. Don't get too frustrated, but make it easy for them at first. Show them the new signal, say your verbal, and lure them right to the ground, and do that a few times. And then progress to signal and verbal without luring to the ground, and then try just your hand signal. So I really do like that hand signal. I like it for a distance down. So kind of the best way to get your dog to stop quickly is to ask them to lie down in place. So, and that takes practice. It takes practice on having a dog that will respond to their down cue at a distance and quickly. But using that visual can help you get your dog down from a distance. If I ever need to get my dogs to stop quickly, that tends to be what they hear and see. They'll hear me say flat, and they'll see my hand up like so, which means I need them to lie down and collect. Yeah, so those are your hand signals. Dogs will figure out whatever signal you decide to use. As long as you put it in conjunction with the behavior they've been rewarded for, they will figure it out. So you don't have to be picky about your hand signals. They don't have to be the same as mine. And your dogs will probably figure them out anyway. So I just shared with you a couple that tend to be used with trainers and stuff. So your stays, let's remember on our stays, and I'll practice a down stay here quickly with the thirsty pup. Let's remember with our stays that we want to get a really good understanding with our dogs with some duration before we start adding too much distance. Your technique is that you should go back to your dog and reward them, repeat your stay, and then back up a little bit. Once you start adding your distance, add just a big step back at a time, and maybe keep your duration about the same that they've been working. So get a chunk of time that they're pretty consistent with. I like to say 30 to 45 seconds. Could be 45 seconds to a minute. Could be more depending on your dog. And then once you've got a good chunk of time that your dog understands they shouldn't move unless you have told them to move, then you can start adding a little bit more distance, all right? So I'll practice with mine here. Riggs, Riggs. Good boy. I might incorporate my hand signal. Riggs. Heel. Good boy. Flat. Stay. So I may have mentioned in my last video, stay is relatively new for him in this kind of setup. I've always done a wait cue for agility where I will release him kind of from here to me. For me, stay means you stay until I get back to you. Stay is a little bit more solid for me. So I've just really started working on that with him. See, I've added some distraction with the toy out here, apparently. Yes. Stay. So your technique is you go back to your dog, you use your marker word to tell them they earned a reward, pay them the reward, repeat your stay, and go back to the distance. I'm going to go another step further. Okay, good job. What a good old boy you are. It's a good boy. Yeah, so again, I don't tend to give a food reward on release. The release is the reward in the end for me. And I always do, usually a little bit more, but I always do a little bit of an engagement with my dog, have a mini celebration and let them go about their business. So when I'm practicing in kind of a session, I might do 2 or 3 stays, and I might vary them throughout my session. I'll do some stationary work, and I'll do some moving work with my dogs, heel work, recall, things like that. So the last thing I am going to leave you with, speaking of recall, I cannot stress enough how recall involves teaching your dog to chase you and have fun doing so. Reward them when they catch up to you. Do not make them do any tricks or sits or downs or anything when they get to you. Just reward the moment they get there. Practice leaving them, running off, rewarding them. And once you've got some good headway with that, practice just calling them without giving them that added information of your body movement. So, but again, practice those chase recalls all the time. I do it with my older dogs. I do it obviously with my young dog all the time. This guy has a really, really great fast recall. Most of my dogs always have. Josie's the slowest of all, but it's just her style. It's not even that she's a slow dog, but she's like, I'll come when I'm coming. She'll come, she's responsive quickly, but she comes at her own pace, a very steady pace. There's no picking it up unless maybe I've got some really good food, but I don't bribe for recalls. So anyhow, so I'll just show you kind of what that would look like if we weren't offering any help. We were just calling our dog. So it's how you kind of proof your recall a bit. Here, bud. Let me take that away. Briggs, come here, buddy. Here. Good boy. Briggs, heel. Here, buddy. Briggs. Wait. Briggs, come. Yes, good boy. Good job. So I was a little bit poor timing. Good job with my reward. Good boy. I didn't have my treat quite ready. Again, I don't like to bribe on a recall, so I will often dig for my reward. But it made me a little bit slower when I went to reward my dog. He almost got to sit in there, which isn't a big deal if your dog sits. My point with that is that you're always rewarding the last thing your dog did. So if they come to you and you ask them to sit and you treat them, you've simply rewarded another sit. Whereas in that recall moment, I like you to really get that point across to your dog that it's the arrival to you that is worthy of the celebration, and that's what they're getting paid for. Yeah, and I cannot stress enough how practicing in different environments is important for all of those basic foundation things that you've learned over the past few weeks. Eye contact, I practice it everywhere. Stays, I practice everywhere. Walking is a constant struggle and battle and constantly learning. And recall, right? Attention, recall, stays. Again, walking is an everyday thing. But those other things I tend to practice in each new environment I go to with my dog. Or environments where I frequent or where I walk regularly. We're not going to too many new environments these days. We're pretty limited, but I try to work wherever we go. It will make your dog more responsive in more environments, the more environments you practice in. So I hope that these videos have been helpful. I appreciate any questions, comments, concerns, any feedback, any problems you're having. I'll help as much as I can, and hopefully someday we can get together, but for now, this is what we've got. Thank you guys, and certainly send me a message if there's anything I can help you with, or if you want to do some live training later on, let me know and I can add you to a list for that. Okay, thanks. Night, guys.